So it's officially the stats and award season of our Bisons franchise. We have a bye week, obviously, coming up here in the wildcard round, which we definitely need. We have a bunch of injuries that we're hoping to get over. Trey Palmer should be back, and Cordell Jackson will be one game removed, which is unfortunate because Ronnie Shelton, I think, is the guy we need more, but we'll take anyone coming back that we can get. Of course, we have a lot of staff points. We'll probably have some upgrades in here. As far as the playoff picture, I don't know if it's actually updated, so we'll sim and then take a look at this updated playoff picture. But some stats and awards, we should have something, right? Something. Not really sure because Jadarius Lewis with the interceptions and, you know, some of our wide receivers like Romeo Doubs were injured. But obviously, number 1 seed for us. Number 1 seed for the Golden Eagles on the other side. Condors at number 2. We have the Black Knights at 7, 5 for Thunderbirds. So no one else in our division actually made the playoffs, which I don't think is like the biggest shock in the world. It's not the best team set in the league, but it's weird because the teams aren't that bad, right? The Elks have, like, when we play them, they have the toughest D-line you could ever ask for, which, trust me, we do not ask for. But let's take a look at the stats real quick, the rest of the league, and then let's actually go our first, because we might have some guys in the top, and it just spoils it anyways. But Jadarius Lewis, just under 5,000 yards, 47 touchdowns, 18 interceptions. Those picks definitely climbed a little bit, but as far as completion percentage goes, even though 60 is low, I believe that is by far his highest percentage, right? Yeah, 55 into 57 into 60, the yards per attempt raising every single season. You know, it's definitely improvement. You know, from the first year to the second year was like, I don't know if it's really an improvement, but this year definitely an improvement. Without a doubt, 20 points up on the passer rating and just a lot of pros versus cons. As far as rushing goes, Chris Rodriguez definitely had a down year compared to other years. A little bit of injuries, but also just a little bit of struggling. You know, the blocks weren't really there. You know, last year, 7.3 yards per carry, you know, almost 2,100 yards, and, you know, almost half was taken away this last season. The broken tackles are still there, which tells you it's the blocking, right? The blocking wasn't as good, and you know, his averages, you know, per carry might look different, but if you look at touchdowns, higher touchdowns, tackles, you know, you look at the comparison in attempts, he would have had more broken tackles this year, yards after contact, you know, 100 versus, you know, another like 70 carries, so with the long as well, you can just tell that the blocking wasn't as good as normal years, and it's just the way it is. Of course, receiving technically about the same, nothing really going on there. And then Griffin, 440 yards on 7.2 yards per carry. You know, that really big 200-yard game where he had to come in for Rodriguez was spectacular, and, you know, he doesn't really have a super long run, so it's not like he just got really lucky with a big run. He just very consistent, and we're glad to have him around. That's really all I can say there. As far as receiving, 3 receivers at 1,000 plus touchdowns at, you know, 10, 15, 14. As far as the actual yards go, specifically though, Morant 1608, Kuntz 1089, Palmer 1045. Other receivers, obviously Romeo Doubs. He didn't play that many snaps, but either did Palmer. You know, about 100 more snaps, almost double the yards. So, you know, definitely a really good year from Palmer, which is good, but Romeo Doubs being injured, it does suck. Rodriguez dropped the ball less than normal, I suppose. It doesn't actually show drops here for some reason. Ellison in a couple of games. Bellinger's obviously great as a backup. Wise injured like all year long. But yeah, that's really that. As far as blocking goes, what did we allow for sacks? Not a whole lot, but there's a lot of like forced throws, interceptions in general because of, you know, getting rid of the ball as we're being hit. His offensive line isn't as good as it's saying, right? Like it's not an offensive line that only gave up this many sacks. It's just they gave up a billion pressures that we barely got out of. As far as the defense goes, only 100 plus yard or tackler anyways. Tackle for a loss, 16 for Gleason. DTs really didn't seem to get involved too much there. Sacks though, Gleason at 8.5, which is obviously down for him. Gary 7 sacks, 6 for Cam and Walt. Ronnie Shelton 5.5, Cordell with 4. Just a down year for sacks, unfortunately. Picks, Riley Moss with 9 should go to X Factor, I'd imagine. Johnson maybe goes to Superstar, would be great. Taylor with 5 could go to Superstar. Wilson at 4, and now we're kind of getting to the numbers where, you know, nothing's probably going to happen Forced fumbles, not much, not really much. What about touchdowns this year? 4 of them on defense. Any safeties? I thought we had 1. I guess not. As far as kicking, Ryland had a field goal blocked. He missed 2 kicks in general, missed 2 extra points. Turk punting 47 yards per punt, which is a little misleading because a lot of times he does at the punt. We're slightly out of field goal range. It's not like we're 10 yards out. We're like a few yards out, and we had the punt, and we're angling, and we're doing well. 16 punts only, which is kind of good, kind of bad. Calvin Austin ended up with 22.9 yards per return, which is really not the best because obviously 25 is where you start when you fair catch. So statistically, our numbers are telling us don't return the ball. Just don't return the ball. But yeah, looking at the quarterbacking, you can definitely tell that Jadarius Lewis is not winning MVP. He had a good season, but they value those turnovers and lack thereof, if you will. And some quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes and Tua and Dak and even Mac Jones, surprisingly, that just threw so little of interceptions that I have to imagine that ratio is going to be the reason why they win. Burrow even maybe higher than Jadarius. There's just a lot of interceptions, unfortunately. Super gunslinger mode, fun to watch, but as far as like actually winning the award, probably not going to happen, even though he has 0.9 yards per attempt higher than the rest. Passer rating, though, he's not even in like the top 10, I imagine. You could see he's like slightly outside, or maybe he is actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8th, which is not bad, but it's not great either. Jacobs, number 1 rusher in the league. He did fumble once. That's not really that big. Javonte Williams, only 8 touchdowns, where some of these other guys are all like averaging like 20 plus. Very high touchdown numbers. Rodriguez had some good numbers too, 16. It's not as good as his last year, obviously, but still really good. Broken tackles, also the highest. Yards after contact, Jacobs with Rodriguez at the 3rd spot. Highest rush, 96 for Taylor. Obviously, Rodriguez wasn't even half of that, really. So, just a down year, mainly caused by the blocking. Just, you can tell, because the broken tackles are as high as ever, yet and the content, yards after contact are high as ever, but he just has less yards, which tells you just didn't have as many like free breakaway lanes. Morant's the best in the league by far, 1,600 yards receiving, 15 touchdowns, should be good enough to win any wide receiver award, which it's XP, but it doesn't really matter too much. Tight end was 2nd ranked, not that it really once again matters. Both of them are X factors. Palmer, he did have a lot of touchdowns, so maybe sneaks out some award with that, or not maybe award, but Pro Bowl spot, which maybe gives him a dev up, hopefully. As far as blocking goes, don't know if there's any actual, legit. I guess Parham was actually pretty good. Zach Martin was great. But yeah, there's, no tackles on this list that are on there. But who gave up the most sacks? We've seen a couple of sacks in there. Charles Cross, 20 of them. McGlinchey at 18. Mekhi Becton at 17. The Conkster, Conklin at 15. Some decently high numbers. Once again, misleading from our standpoint because we had guys that barely gave up any sacks. Yeah, we were definitely one of the most pressured teams in the league. Tackles for a loss were all right. Sacks, very good. I wish we could show up on this list one of these years, but not going to happen this late this year. Of course, picks we had the highest pick people, which obviously means that I would imagine both are going to be Pro Bowlers, which would be great. Kicking percentage, any guys that had 100? Yeah, their amount is so much lower, though. We have, almost double some of those guys with 100%. Highest, or longest kick, I should say. A couple of guys that got blocked multiple times. Nothing else going on there. Punting. Wright had 66 punts. The best punter was technically Daniel Whelan. Dixon kind of up there as well. Kick returns. 1 kick return touchdown in the entire league. 0 punt returns. So special teams dead. And one more little look-see before we go into the actual awards themselves. Offensively, we were the number 1 offense in the league. The amount of the points per game were very high. Almost 36 points per game, but we almost needed to because our defensive points per game are also going to be insanely high. Dreadnoughts, also in the 30 range, which is impressive. First downs, we had the most. Rushing touchdowns, obviously nowhere near the most. Passing touchdowns, definitely near the most. Pass yards, number 1. Rush yards, somewhat up there. but not even comparable to a team like the Golden Eagles, who, ironically enough, are also the number 1 seed. And then defensively, we gave up probably some of the most. 4,600 passing, but we were the number 1 run defense, which is a little surprising. Yeah, actually, we did limit the big runs this year. Points allowed, we were the very high, but not number 1. Number 1 sacks did go to us, just, kind of a team effort. Fumbles, way up there. The Lumberjacks, interceptions, way up there are us. And that's really all I want to see. Let's take a look. MVP, it's not going to surprise me because it's obviously not going to be us, but still curious to see who wins. If he's even on the list, he is 6. Okay, I mean, I can live with that, Looking at some of the numbers, I thought even Burrow would have been higher than us, so not the worst. 6 for Jadarius Lewis, MVP, or Coach of the Year anyways. We were number 3. I mean, at this point, the whole hype of taking over a bad team is kind of gone. It's like, okay, well, at this point, the team's turning around. Do better. Looking at, oh, that sucks. Offensive Player of the Year, Morant was number 2. Rodriguez at 4, and Palmer at 10. Defensive Player of the Year at number 4 and 8 and 10. Rookie of the Year on offense, Griffin was 3, Ellison 4. So, if we started Griffin, he probably would have been Superstar Plus. Defensive Rookie of the Year, Darren Riley actually wins it. Okay, Kai Gary at number 3. We like to see that. Darren Riley with a dev up coming his way. There you go. Jadarius Lewis in the Pro Bowl, hoping for a dev up. I don't know if it's going to happen, but he did have the number 1 yards and touchdowns, I think. Just, some interceptions in there. Rushing, number 2. So the NFC, not the best running back teams, but we'll take it. Pro Bowl for him. Wide receiver, obviously number 1. Trey Palmer, that's a Pro Bowl, I think, as well. So I think they allow, 4 or 5 in there? That's nice. O-line at number 3 and 4, even though it wouldn't have been deserved. Number 6, that would have been deserved. Ironically enough, he probably is the one that deserves it the most, as everyone else is a guard, right? He's the highest tackle. He's actually the only tackle, which is maybe you should go to Superstar kind of thing. Defensive line, number 10, barely getting on there with Gleason. Linebackers at 4 and 8. DBs at number 1, 2, 4, 6. Kicker at number 2, which, I kind of want to compare this now. How was it actually comparatively? Lutz was probably 10 for 10, wasn't he? I think there was one of them that was 10 for 10. Yeah, he was. I would say he's probably better, right? I don't know about the actual length of kicks. Yeah, I don't think anyone would argue that he was better at all. 12 of 13 from 50 plus versus 5 of 6. Yeah, obviously Chad Ryland was better, but it is what it is there. Let's take a look if we have any some upgrades, because we're obviously going to have some weekly strategy as well, even though we're not actually playing. We're still going to be practicing. We'll get those done and see if we have extra upgrades to do. We have a couple of upgrades, some starters, some important players. Let's go top to bottom. Normally, kind of do worst to first, but Joe Moran, who is being eaten alive here. Do we go slot? I think last time we went with slot, and it was okay. Yeah, we'll go slot. Why not? Need that medium upgrade more than anything, which we get 1 to medium, 1 to short, and then 2 to catching, which is now 98 for Morant. He's actually really good. Nick Jones, not that bad of a zone corner, but we'll definitely upgrade that because man coverage is already in the 90s, are very close to it. Gets a 1 to acceleration, 2 to zone coverage. It's not a bad upgrade at all either. 82 zone coverage now. Jack Gleason, still probably want to do a speed rusher, right? Yeah, he's only 89. Pretty sure the last speed rusher we did, though, it didn't even do anything for him. Give me a +2. +2 to hit power, 1 to finesse. Puts him at 90 plus now, which is great. What's his actual hit power anyways? Does it show it? 74. That's not going to really do much. Kai Gary, obviously going to be a power rusher upgrade, as you still usually do get a block shed anyways. And even if you don't, you get that power move, which we want to get to the quarterback better. More sacks, more penetration equals more XP. Charles Quincy, obviously the new starter again. He wasn't bad last year for us. Power move +1, block shed +1. He's not a bad player at all. 86 power move is really good. Terrence Williams, it's always agile that we need for these guys, and I think it's still pretty relevant to do. No actual upgrade, which is crazy. XP sliders are pretty damn high. Run block finesse is what he needed. That's what he got. He's almost 80 across, and the rest are kind of backups, which, with our injuries, might be needed. I'm not going to say his name. I'll tell you that much. I'm not saying his name. maybe one at a time, but not at the same time. We did our staff upgrade points as well. Let's go to the divisional and see who we play. We play the Lumberjacks. What do they do well? We've recently seen something with the Lumberjacks. Maybe it was bad. I can't remember. They're a hot opponent as well. See who they had to beat. They had to beat the Thunderbirds, who have a pretty good roster. I believe that's Jordan Love's team, who is obviously on the MVP list. 24-21. The Mounties cooking up 41-35, and then the Condors, the number 2 seed, going on to the next round against those Mounties. And then on the other side, Monarchs win by 4. Who the hell are those guys? Wait, who are these guys? Are we going against the Pioneers, actually? And we're going to be taking on the Pioneers, who are 10-7, and they're apparently a hot opponent. I thought we seen them on the list for something. Or maybe it was the Lumberjacks I'm thinking of. I don't know. But the Condors move on, 24-20 over the Black Knights. The Mounties move on over the Dragons, 41-35, which is a really high score. And then, of course, the team we're playing against, the Pioneers, 24-21 over the Thunderbirds, led by Jordan Love, who's a pretty good overall at this point. Other side, you have the Monarchs winning their game as the 7th seed, 31-27, against a Dreadnoughts team that, was second place for points per game. The Lumberjacks, speaking of, win by 7 over the Riverhogs, and then the Snowhawks, the only real blowout in this weekend, and they win 35-14 over the Aviators. You got the Golden Eagles and the Monarchs. Could see a crazy upset there, and then obviously the Snowhawks versus the Lumberjacks. Definitely making for a pretty interesting one, as, like I said, almost all those games were very, very close. But were the teams that were waiting, our number 1 seeds, are we just easily going to blow through them or not? Yeah, we said that. We said what we had to do. But anyways, if you guys enjoy the stats and awards, maybe leave a like, subscribe if you're new. But more importantly, be on the lookout for later today when we're actually going to have this matchup against the Pioneers. Of course, a rebuild tomorrow, I'd imagine, and that'll be that. Regardless, be on the lookout for that video later today. Anyways, hope you guys come back for next video. But until next video, Jadarius was snubbed. See ya.